Says attendees still on hold. Do I need to hit the start broadcast?
On the air.
All right, looks like we've got some audience filling in, 12 people, welcome, 14. Maybe just give a minute or so to let a few more come in before we get underway. 16. Welcome all, very excited about this session. Paradigm shift in managing workplace planning data. I'm here, I'm gonna kick it off and then let Mr. Ben Swan really deliver. And when I say Ben delivers, I really mean that. For those of you that don't know Ben, he's been a stalwart in the industry. I wanted to partner with Ben well over a decade, almost 18 years ago, when I learned that there was someone in the Canadian oil sands who had cracked the nut on how do you apply workplace planning principles into the electrical domain. And I got a kind of a short preview 15 years ago, but it was more recently in about 4 years where working with ExxonMobil in their Baton Rouge refinery, it was a bit of a, well, we know workplace planning works well for piping and still, and it's tough to get contractors on board. How do we get the contractors on board? And I engaged in bringing Ben down from the Canadian oil sands down into Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And boy, did again, Ben, once he showed Grandpa's logic and how things work, Ben's comes from the field, and he's built what could be considered the world's one of the world's best approaches on how do you handle not just 3D models, but more importantly, as you get the data takeoffs and his experience and be able to, as a contractor, and have a contractor's tool and approach to be able to manage the data and do additional takeoffs in data. And I don't want to spill the beans here, but let's just say it went from a healthy group of skeptics in the Gulf Coast saying, well, we don't think work-based planning applies into the electrical and instrumentation disciplines, to suddenly realizing, not only is it, if you take a contractor's eye towards this, not only does work-based planning apply into the E&I trades, but how do you get data off the drawings and make this work? And so without further ado, I'm going to let Ben lead the show, and then I'll be participating, particularly around gathering up questions. And please put your questions into the chat area and the question area. We want to make it an interactive discussion. So without further ado, Mr. Ben Swan, take it away.
All righty. Thank you very much, Ted. We'll start off with kind of an introduction and an overview. We're going to walk through the global settings and of Sigma. We'll cover off the align data, assemble data, execute data. We'll do some key takeaways and hopefully get the questions and answers with 10 or 15 minutes remaining. Pay attention to the bottom left. There's little icons that are changing. They're in the overview. We're really introducing the Sigma modules. There's 3 of them that you'll see in this overview. But what we found that a situation exists within most companies where there's a large communication gap between the construction management in the office and the construction activities in the field. Project management systems exist to keep schedule and cost in check, but the information being fed into these systems comes in from word of mouth, paper, and spreadsheets. This process results in large indirect construction costs, and in many cases, this information may not even be accurate and paint a false picture of project reality, which in turn encourages the wrong remedial actions. Our industry spends millions of dollars on software for the construction and project management teams that need the core data from the field to do their job. Unfortunately, up until now, the only way we've been able to get that is through time-consuming face-to-face meetings and by manually inputting that information from paper documents into multiple systems multiple times. Almost every contractor has employees signing off on documents, paper getting lost, messed up data, which all leads to a lack of alignment, an inefficient assembly process of buildable packages, costly execution, and inaccurate reporting. Element's desktop and mobile software bridges the communication gap between the project management and construction activities in the field. So what I want to kind of cover here right now is 3 processes that we're going to walk through in this presentation. We're going to stay focused on the progressible component or a task. Now, for piping, that might be a spool. For instrumentation, might be a flow transmitter. For electrical, that might be a transformer. It could be a task in the sense that, we want to demo the lighting on process module 3032. Whether it be a progressible component or whether it be a progressible task, the key thing is that it has a quantity in man hours that are being progressed in terms of the status. What sums up the total quantity in hours, and it's what we progress against. Sigma Portal is a web-based governance tool that allows the alignment of project data. And what we'll walk through is in that alignment process of importing, aligning, reviewing, and assigning data, that progressible component actually can become intelligent, and it knows its estimated hours, knows its quantity, it knows the project cost code it belongs to, it knows its system, knows its CWA and CWP, and it knows the drawing that it belongs to. That component now, if you will, becomes almost intelligent, and it now becomes accessible into what we call Sigma TrueTask, which is a Windows 10 application designed and built, and it's a lot of fun to be able to build packages, especially when you have a big 50-inch touchscreen like Ted had us in BRAP in building IWPs. But the process in assembling the data within Sigma TrueTask is you build, so you assign the components to an IWP, you assemble the content that you want inside based on your workface planning procedure. You send that IWP when the workface planner has it complete through an IWP approval process, so it's digital, and then you issue it to the foreman in the field. In that step, that component now knows the IWP name that it belongs to. It knows the content associated with that IWP, and now it knows the IWP schedule line that it belongs to. That IWP, once approved and issued to the field, goes into Sigma Crew, which is a mobile app, either an iPad or it's also available on an Android. The key process from a foreman's perspective is brassing in and out. So that's when he meets with his crew in the morning and he signs in who's on site, does a toolbox talk, does his time in progress for the day on what was accomplished. And then the other thing is in not only creating but signing off on punches. Sigma Crew allows for the punch management of IWP systems and PSSRs. And now that progressible component in that process in using Sigma Crew now knows its actual time, it knows its IWP punch, its system punch if it ends up being punched, and also its daily progress. So from a contractor's perspective, again, Sigma Portal is a web-based, Sigma TrueTask is Windows 10 for the workplace planner, and then Sigma Crew is a mobile app, either an iPad or an Android. The Sigma Portal allows for establishing a global structure. It helps to standardize your process deliveries across your portfolio of projects, which is a hard thing to do in the contract world right now. It has project settings to be able to set up your project. Everything that you set up within the global settings is inherited into your projects. Sigma TrueTask builds and assembles the IWPs, and Sigma Crew executes. Beyond just the contractor's version, with our partnership with WorkPax, we've created probably the best scalable AWP solution for owner-operator organizations. One of the key things that Advance brings is in the POC development and status visualization, the VCM in the 3D model, constraint management, and they've got a very rich BI dashboard reporting for managing your projects on a weekly or monthly basis. So let's start in the global settings. We're going to cover a few of the key things, but not everything that's involved in the global settings. The first thing is being able to import your users. Based on your workplace planning procedures, you can create the roles that fill your procedures. And then based on those roles, you can go into the permissions and provide permission settings in terms of what each role is able to see, what each role is able to manage in the global settings and the project settings, within True Task and assembling your IWP, and within Crew and executing. Innate to Sigma is a specific task breakdown structure that is a default. You can configure your own, but I think that what we've got in Sigma suffices most every discipline. It provides a task breakdown. You can drill into the progress type and access your rules of credit there as well. Ties to a task breakdown structure. Not every discipline can manage their work within a task breakdown. If you've been around any of my presentations specifically on the E&I, everything can be broken down into those 7 tasks based on Grandpa's logic. But we do need to drill down into a second level of a task type breakdown, in this case instrumentation, where we then can manage and control things like gas detection, air supplies, process inline, process remote. And so each of these task and task types are directly related to potentially to a rules of credit that you want to set up, and or to a task type, which is really a cost code structure. Innate within Sigma is the ability to establish a direct cost code for each discipline that you're doing workplace planning for. You can establish your trended cost codes, which every contractor has for weather delays or things like that. These codes now become available within Execute for the foreman to capture his delays. And if in your approval process, if you're in a time and material and a maintenance environment and the client is part of that approval process, then all of these delays are being approved on a daily basis, and it makes doing FCOs really fast. For your project controls, you set up and establish your field change order cost code structure as well as your indirects. Workflows, there's 8 workflows. I think it encompasses most everything with workplace planning. They're easy to adjust. You can either add a step. The other thing within the Sigma workflows is you can have more than 2 roles within a step. It becomes really important when you're running back and forward shifts, or a day shift and a night shift, especially on IWP approvals. If you're looking at a superintendent to approve it, you can have 2 people looking at it to be able to approve that step. The other thing that each of the workflows has, not all of them use it, but is a submission email and approval email. That becomes important specifically, I'll talk FCO, where you might have a project engineer or a project manager that's not directly involved in the issuing or the approval of the FCO, but wants a notification that an FCO has been submitted, and then approval in terms of getting an email when that FCO or the RFI has been approved. Default within Sigma is an IWP approval and closeout workflow that's easily adjusted. You've got crew direct timesheets as well as indirect timesheets. You've got punch sign-offs for IWPs as well as final walkdown or system punches. There's a workflow for field change orders as well as RFIs. Each discipline has a set of default rules of credit. They're established. They're quite easy to be able to go in and look at, adjust the rules of credit, or adjust the weighted value according to what you have internal to your project controls. I won't spend a lot of time on the estimating libraries, needless to say, specifically on the E&I. We've got hundreds of thousands of components that are in here with material codes labored to industry norms. But one of the key things that we do is when it comes to the cable schedule, we can take the engineering data that most engineers provide in terms of a cable schedule, a little bit of manipulation in the Excel, and dump it in, and it'll produce a class 1 material takeoff and provide hours for pulling, glanding, and terminating both ends. In Canada, on one of the projects we had every TechScan cable that was manufactured. And what that allowed us to do when we dumped the cable schedule in is it provided us cables that were part of the cable schedule but were not being manufactured. So it was a real quick and easy RFI to be able to redo that cable size. Now, when it comes to the package configuration, whether you're building just a general IWP, whether you're building a PSSR walk-down package, a system, or an IWP, you can add the different steps. You can create your own table of contents. You can upload your PowerPoint that you want to use, and you can adjust it. Now, when we get into the true task and the assembling of the IWP, you'll pick up that there's a lot of the data that's pre-populated. You'll see in the bottom that there's a greater than or minus than. And so if you have your own template that you want to use, the pre-populated fields can be coded to be able to pre-populate irrespective of the template. So with the global settings, understanding that when those things in terms of your cost codes, your workflows, your common codes, when that is set up, every new project that you now create within a line or within the portal, it inherits all of that work. So it greatly decreases the administrative time, it increases the accuracy. Again, within a line, you've got your RFI and FCO, drawing viewer, package viewer. We won't go into a lot of that functionality. We'll stay focused on aligning the data to that progressible component or task. And so one of the first things you're going to do is you want to go into the portal. What you'll find is the top banner is been designed for functional control. And so you have your project controls, or functional discipline, sorry. So you end up with your project controls, your document control, construction management, quality. So it's easy to be able to go into that functional discipline and find the task that needs to be done. In this case, we're uploading drawings. It'll be under document control. You click on drawing. There's 3 ways within Sigma to get your drawings into the software. You can add them one at a time. We don't usually do that. Sometimes we do that when there's an FCO and you've only got one drawing. But you typically upload drawings in batches. If you got a fast, high-speed internet, you can do batches of 100 to 300 drawings. If you're working off of Wi-Fi or a low internet, we recommend doing batches of less than 50. And then, of course, if your organization or your project is tied in with AConnect, we can configure an API and automatically import the drawings for your project from AConnect into Sigma. Under the construction management, one key area that Ted was talking about is getting that class 1 material takeoff. In the plenary session on buildable packages, we're going to talk specifically of the difference between a class 1 estimate and a class 1 material takeoff, and the distinct difference and the value of understanding where those gaps are in building and creating buildable work packages. It's quite easy. You pick the discipline that you're loading the data to. If you were loading an MTO for a scope change, you would identify FCO on the list of the FCOs that were created, would pick up, and you would attach that material specifically to that FCO. The data loader type, there's only 2. There's a generic and there's a task specific. The task specific is used for things like heat trace and cable schedules, where we're with little manipulation, taking the actual engineering data and dumping it in and producing a class 1 material takeoff. When it comes to the completions under construction management, you can add these systems one by one, or you can import your table by system. You can identify it by process or non-process, the system group in terms of pre-outage, outage, or post-outage, the priority of that, the type that it is, and the system name. Now, within a line, there's 3 different ways to assign components or tasks, progressible tasks, to a system. In this case, we're showing it by line number. You could do it by category, and then you can make individual adjustments. But basically, you pick your associated lines with this system. In this case, it's medium pressure steam. You click assign all. It's going to ask you if you really want to do that, and automatically each one of those components now know what system it belongs to. In building hydro packages, again, all of these are just drop-down menus. We're using data that you've already entered into the system, so you're not entering the same information more than once. Outside of the date and the description of the package, everything's a drop-down menu that you're choosing from. And it'll show you now all of these unassigned components. You check off the components that you want to assign to this hydro package, and you click assign. It's going to bring those in. And I'll spend a little bit of time right now looking at this, because now you can have, in the case of either a system, or in this case, we'll talk specifically about a hydro test package, and you can have, a couple dozen items to 160 items. And what Sigma does is it takes the hydro portion of the hours of each one of those components and rolls it up based on your rules of credit in this case, and creates a progressible component, or in this case, a progressible task for setting up the hydro, for testing that hydro, and reinstating the hydro. Makes the progress step in the field for the foreman very easy and very quick, and maintains the accuracy of your reporting. Again, with completions, you want to be able to build down system walk-down packages. Again, this is all drop-down of the systems that you've imported outside of the start date and the description. You're now looking at the lines that are associated with this walk-down system, specifically if it's process. You're looking at the components, and what this is now showing you is that at this point in time when we're creating this walk-down package, these components are all incomplete. And so it's a great interface to be able to come if you've got a walk down you're doing next week, and seeing if there's any components here that are incomplete. And then it brings the drawings automatically associated with those components into your system walk down package. And that now system walk down package is created, and it now shows up in your completions assignment listing. When it comes to project controls, again, this relationship specifically in the challenge around E&I in closing the gap between an estimate and a class 1 material takeoff. We allow for the importing of your estimate in terms of at a cost code level. We import the MTO, and you now look at the differences in plan to the MTO. I've got an example in the plenary session that I'm going to go over and talk about this specific item and the challenge it has. Sigma understands that challenge and has resolved it. You can hit a plus or a minus on those and adjust those hours, and then update and lock. And what that will do is, if you had a item of cable tray with 1,000 components in it, it would adjust all of those components to align so that the sum of those components are a direct reflection of the contractor's estimate. Quality control, we won't get a lot into it, but basically it's where you're going to do your punch management, your RFI logs, and then any logs that are coming out of your IWPs, like your lessons learned, are going to show up underneath your quality control. Under tools, you can be able to view all of your packages. You can view it page by page, or you can view the entire package if you want. There's also a robust drawing viewer. This drawing viewer and the functionality of it is in all 3 modules. It's in the mobile app, it's in Assemble and TrueTask, as well as Portal and Align. It's got some rich domain searching by drawing types. You can also search by engineering tag, from tag, to tag, and a lot of the criteria that comes out of the MTO to be able to find the drawings that you're looking for. So with the align portion now being done, and that progressible component in the bottom left here now knows its estimated hours, it knows its quantity, it knows its project cost code, its system, its CWA, CWP, and its drawing. We're now going to step into assembling that data in Sigma TrueTask, where you're going to build an IWP through a process, and then you're going to assemble it. Attached also within the module is a drawing viewer and a work package viewer. We won't spend a lot of time in either of those or in the sign-off, staying focused on that progressible component and task and how that works within the software. All right, just do a time check here. So this is the home page. So you're going to click on build an IWP. You got to pay attention to this screen, a little bit of a delay here. What will show up first after you hit build IWP is a list of all of the CWPs. This is a panel and it just scrolls back and forth, floats back and forth. You're then going to pick your schedule line item. And then at this point in time, you've got a component grouping or a filtering capacity. This functionality is deep domain trade logic and is specific to each discipline within Sigma. In this case, on the far left, you start with your task and your task types. You go to a work location, you go over to a turnover stage. You can look at lines if you were packaging work from lines, if you wanted to package specifically in the cables and the from and the to or the progress steps. And so you typically would start on the left-hand side. In this case, we'll choose grounding. And what ends up happening is all of the filtering capacity that isn't associated with grounding disappears. You go ahead and you go say, okay, I want to assign those components. And what your workface planner is going to be presented is a list of drawings and associated components based on what he's filtered. If you simply just went to assign components, then every drawing and every component is going to show up here. But with that filtering, what ends up happening to at least 95% of the time is you're able to get down to a filtered list of components. And you can either select the individuals or you can select all. Gives you the task, gives you the progress type, gives you the engineering tag, gives you some information in terms of quantity and hours. Little 3 dots here, you can open that up and it gives you even more information related to that component. You just simply grab them and you move them over, and now those assigned components of 26 hours and 10 components become part of that IWP. That process, the other thing that you'll notice is that there were 3 drawings and now there's 2. When all of the components that are on a drawing are assigned to an IWP and there's no unassigned components based on the workface planning filtering, then that drawing disappears and it just increases the efficiency of building the IWP for the planners. With the IWP built, you now can go into assembling that work package. And it's nice to be able to have an IWP release planning relationship to align with your table of contents. You can filter this list based on planner or build by date. Then it's quite obvious, you know, the green Y's are pages are complete, the red N's are not done, and any of the gray X's are pages that the planner has excluded as not required for that IWP. There are some things that happen in terms of, hey, we've got to make an adjustment. You actually can come in here and click on any of these, open up that specific page, make your changes, and then save it. You're now going to go into the actual assembling. You're going to choose the package type you're building. In this case, we're building up an IWP. There's a level of effort that I'll explain in a little bit. In this case, we're going to pick the high. We're going to pick a material list because that is one of the things that is automated in terms of populating. And you're going to click next. It's going to bring up the PowerPoint. And in this case, because this template is automatically pre-populated, then all you got to do is just simply close out the PowerPoint. It's going to give you an alert. Template was saved successfully, but based on the level of effort, you have to select the IWP. So you're going to go in and you're going to say, okay, you're going to go through and find the IWP. You're going to select that IWP, and then you're going to hit next. And it's going to tell you that that template was successfully saved. That process is the same for every table of contents Some of them are pre-populated, like the material and the drawing log. Others, like the title page, are created by the workplace planner. To view that page, you click on the work package viewer. You're then presented with your CWPs and all the IWPs associated with that. Again, this is a pane that just scrolls across, glides on ice. One other thing that I'll point out is that based on the life cycle of the IWP, you now have statuses. So you know that this structural steel package has got components assigned, where this one is being assembled. This one is actually started in the field. This is the one we're dealing with. So you click on that one. You can click on the material list that you want to look at, and the cable is showing up. Now, you analyticals that are looking at this, knowing that we just assigned 10 components, but it's only showing up 2. We went back and looked at those components. What it will do is it'll take all of the individual cable that were 10 and 15 foot pieces and combine it into a total length of cable. The connectors were all, if you looked at the progress type, were reinstall and reconnect. And so it's not new material, it's material that's on site that they're removing and reinstalling. And so that kind of goes through what I want to spend a little bit of time right now is on this page. And I want to talk about the different types of pages based on your table of contents. And irrespective of your table of contents, the principles of this are going to apply to your table of contents. The level of effort in a high is something like the material list or IWP scope summary. It has to be done for every single IWP. But there's pages within every IWP that can be applied to multiple. So if you take a look at an IWP plot plan, if that was part of your table of contents within your work-based planning procedure, you could create an IWP plot plan that could apply to 6 or a dozen IWPs. And so if you were to choose a medium, build that IWP plot plan, you could select the IWPs that that page is related to, and it will auto-generate that page for every one of those IWPs. When it comes to the low level of effort, that's a page that is applied to every single IWP. So a great example of that would be the safety muster points. That safety muster points, if you're using it in your table of contents based on your work-based planning procedure, is going to be the same. And so you can create that page once, collect all, and Sigma will create that page for every single IWP for you automatically. The other area that we see in terms of templates is in user defined, where user populates a predetermined data field. And a prime example of that is if you have a permit requirement, you will typically have a template, and the data that the user needs to fill in is within that template. And so table of contents is an example of that, permits, an equipment list where you've got defined templates that then are populated. The other area is where we are where you want to allow your work-based planner to be able to add content to that page, but you also want to auto capture data. So in this case, when we look at the execution authorization page, it's capturing the digital signatures and the dates of the approvers based on the workflow that you established in your global settings. Plus, it's populating the quantity and the hours and allowing the work-based planner to add additional content to that page. And then there's pages that everything is populated based on what you're doing within the software, like that material list. So based on the assignment of the components, when you built the IWP, it's going to auto-generate the drawings that are associated with those components automatically, and it's going to auto-generate the material list automatically. What we're finding is a Sigma advantage, specifically when it comes to building IWPs, has a proven track record of reducing your work-based planner's time in building IWPs by at least 50%. So we've built the IWP, it's gone through the approval process. You're now issuing it out to the field. And we're looking at addressing executable data and attaching that intelligently to that progressible component or task. The key thing within an execute or Sigma crew in the execution of your work is the time and the progress. Outside of time and progress, there's the functionality of the sign-off status, there's a foreman's dashboard, the drawing viewer. Within the work package viewer, you're able to, within each of the IWPs, create an RFI and create a punch. There's also start of the day paperwork and a bunch of other things like brass in and brass out. So let's move on into do a time check here. Right on track, awesome. So although this doesn't have a lot to do with that program, in fact, it doesn't have anything to do with the progressible component, but this functionality on projects, especially on the larger type of projects, if you've been in the field and managing frontline supervision, can be hair pulling, as you can see. We actually offer foremen half hour to an hour in jump time in getting this paperwork set up. Getting their sign-in sheets, getting their toolbox talks. And what we've done is we've digitized that process because of the pain point that it has been on projects in not only getting that paperwork, but it also then in collecting and producing a manpower report for the client within the time frame allotted within the contract, which is always a gong show. Well, not always a gong show, but more often than not a gong show. So within the software, if you have an Android, you got NFC. If you're using NFC cards, you can tap people in. If you're using the iPad, they can put in their PIN. You digitally now know the workers by crew who are brassed in onto site. You can pick your toolbox talk from the list based off your document libraries established in your global settings. You then get the people on your crew to be able to validate that they participated. Now you know which workers participated in which toolbox talk. And then at the end of the shift, when the foreman meets with their crew, they do the same thing that they did at the beginning of the shift, and now you know who brassed out. And you have a digital record of workers brassing in, you have digital record of workers in participation to toolbox talks, and you have digital record of crew signing out. Let's move on to time and progress. You would simply just add a new for the foreman that is on time. If a foreman is behind and didn't get his time and progress, he can click the date. You can go back in and select yesterday's date, and it'll create a time sheet for yesterday. But most foremen don't do that. Most foremen are on time. They can just add new. By adding new, he's going to be taken to this screen, and he's going to have a list of the IWPs that you've assigned to him. He's going to click on the IWP that he was working on that he wants to be able to capture time and progress. And he's going to be presented with the drawings that are associated with that IWP. He's going to select the drawing that he worked on, and it's going to present him the components that are on that drawing associated with that IWP. He'll click on them and assign them to progress. What he can now do is you can either hard key in the progress, you can use the slide rule. In this case, if you can see it, there's a little bit of a pink line here. These components were progressed yesterday, and now he's progressed this one to 100%, this one to 80, and he's progressed this one another 10%. Not so much in piping and structural steel, but more specifically when it comes to instrumentation and electrical in cable pulls. Foremen are manually tracking the actual so that they've got a comparison between the estimate and the actual. But digitally now we capture the actual, and so you can digitally look at the differences between the footage of cable that was estimated to pull and the actual cable. You simply click next, and you're going to be presented with your crew that's been assigned to you. In this case, this is coming from WorkPax Execute, where the names are not assigned. If you're using the contractor version of Sigma Crew, the actual employees' names would show up here. You grab the people that worked on that they'll populate over to here, and you just simply put in your time. And in less time than it takes the foreman to do it manually in paper, He's now digitally captured what got progressed and who worked on it and the hours worked. So we've gone through quickly at a high level at a progressible component and task and identified how Sigma can align your project data and make that component in fact intelligent. We've then gone through and built and assembled an IWP, adding more intelligence to that progressible component or task, and then issued that into the field for the foreman to where we're now capturing the actual time in progress. And whether you're an owner looking for a scalable AWP solution or a contractor looking for a workplace planning solution, one of the key things that we haven't really addressed yet is that throughout this entire process, in each one of those processes, Sigma has been capturing what got done, when it got done, and who did it. And so now in terms of visualizing the status and the progress of your project, all of whatever you want to be able to do in terms of reporting is automatically created with zero administrative effort. So let's look at some of the things that is provided to your project team automatically without any administrative effort. So the first thing we're going to look at is some UIs. This is not all of them, but this is the ones related to the IWP. On a daily basis, based on the activities within the software, you're able to identify the status of every IWP from its process of initial creation all the way to completion. You're able to look at who issued it to the field and when they issued it, as well as within Sigma, we track the start date for a Foreman 1 or a Foreman 2, and the start date isn't registered until the actual time in progress is actually entered into that IWP. At any point in time now, you can actually see where that IWP is at, who has it, and when they received it. The other key thing that we do is a schedule status at an IWP level, showing the IWP planned and IWP end date. We're capturing the actual start date and the actual finish date. And then on a daily basis, we're reporting back up the estimated earned, well, the estimated hours are always there, sorry. But we're bringing up on a daily basis, updating the earned, spent, and percent complete. The other IWP closeout UI that becomes very helpful is in pushing IWPs to closeout. You can see down there near the bottom that we've got an IWP that's 100% complete, but it's not submitted. This client, for example, has an LPO that needs to be done for an IWP prior to allowing to be complete. But we know the IWP has been completed, but we know that the LPO yet is not been submitted, and nor has the IWP actually been submitted into the approval process by the foreman. Now, Sigma doesn't have the rich domain reporting like a WorkPax, but it does have some simple basic reporting. I've always loved this reporting because I've always liked to be able to look at my projects in terms of what's my planned hours, what's my actual hours in relationship to that planned, but more importantly, what is it compared to my earned? Am I earning more than I'm burning, and where am I at relation to my plan? And so this is just a real simple dashboard for an overall. You can now drill down with that view and look at it from a schedule line perspective. You can also look at it from an IWP perspective. Sorry, checking my time. Where Sigma dominates is in the area of detailed progress reporting. If you've ever had to be able to manually create this P&P report, progress and performance report on a weekly basis, you know the level of effort that it takes administratively to be able to create this report. These reports are automatically created and updated on a daily basis. This is a high-level progress and productivity report. We have two views of these reports. This is a great report. Contractors love this because they can dump this down into an Excel format and they can push it into whatever their existing systems are. We've got a detailed report again with this project productivity, and this really has the ability to now drill down and show the progress at every single component and task within that cost code structure of that IWP. Again, we've got a simple view that is great for dumping into Excel and for manipulating the data or pushing into other systems. When it comes to FCOs, often FCOs get pushed in or added to an existing IWP. And so project controls want to be able to know where is the change order at. And so in this report, we're doing the same thing. We're producing a P&P report, but specifically targeted at the FCO work that's been approved on the project. Again, two different views of each one of these reports. This is just simply a daily progress report by IWP at a cost code. So it's identifying on a daily basis the cost codes by IWP that were worked upon, showing the installed quantity, providing you the percent complete and earned and actual hours. This is a great report. This actually, you can now drill down in this report. You can drill down into and find down at the IWP level, the actual hours and installed quantity at a cost code component level for every IWP. You can get your daily foreman reports in a summary level. This report is a great report. This is an IWP status report from a CWA perspective, showing the CWP relationship and the IWPs associated with each CWP and totaling them up. It's providing you the IWP status, so where is it? It's providing you the planned start and finish dates from the schedule. It's providing you the actual start dates that can get pushed into the schedule from execute. When that IWP finalizes its last step in whatever you have set up for your IWP closeout approval workflow, the dates will show up here. And then it's just simply progress and performance showing earned actual percent complete with a performance factor. What's exciting is that in partnership with WorkPax, we can take that raw data and push it into Advance, and you have very rich domain Power BI reporting to be able to manage your project. If you scroll down here along the bottom, there's a dozen plus reports that WorkPax provides you for managing your projects. So key takeaway, Sigma makes work-phase planning easy in terms of aligning your project data, assembling your data, and executing and reporting. Some of the key benefits that you'll experience is that we really decrease the indirect time on redundant administrative tasks. We reduce the keystrokes, which saves you both money and increases your profits. Sigma provides near real-time reporting, allows for faster and more accurate decisions, saving you time and money on your project. It facilitates a paperless ecosystem, increases your foreman's time in the field, which is the #1 statistic of increasing productivity and decreasing safety incidences. You've got built-in integrated project field workflows. We really do eliminate the typical human errors in not only time and progress reporting, but in project reporting overall. And through the portal and the process of assembling and executing your data, there's really an ability for a contractor or an organization, and an owner-operator's organization, to be able to standardize the project setup, planning, execution, and reporting. With about 12 minutes left, we will move over into some questions from the audience, and I'll bring up Ted if he's got any there.
Hey, Ben. Great presentation. We do have some questions coming in. Please send some more in. First question is from Karen Martinez with Zachary. And Karen's asking, how are document versions copied into Sigma, kept in sync with current revs to the document management system of record?
So under document control, we do have a revision control of the drawings. And this really comes down to your project control process. So when a new drawing revision comes in, your project control process needs to be able to look at that drawing and identify, are there any changes? Often there isn't any changes. you can update that drawing with that new revision because there's cosmetic changes on the drawing, and that drawing will automatically be updated within the IWPs automatically. Of course, if that drawing does have changes, you're going to want to be able to create an FCO within a line. You're going to want to be able to take off of the change. You're going to want to be able to load that MTO and send that FCO into the client for approval, ideally prior to execution, but that doesn't always happen in construction. Great question.
Yeah, and you kind of spoke to that integration point with Aconex. You want to speak to that a little bit as well?
Yeah, currently right now on the project and the client that we do have this working with, we do a dump right now on every Friday. That gives notification to the admin within a line or in the portal. And they're able to then view all of those drawings and accept those drawings. That is where ideally the admin is going to be able to capture a revision change. Software will follow the procedure that you have within project controls and within document control.
All right, we've got a question from Alex O'Flattery with the Trillium Group. There are some plants that absolutely ban electric devices on site, or they're very strict guidelines. Can paper copies of IWPs be exported and printed? And are there printable progress trackers and timesheets that can be input into the software at a later time?
So the IWPs can all be printed for a paper copy. And on sites where you're not allowed an iPad or an Android tablet in the field, what you are allowed is to have those iPads and Android tablets in the office, which currently right now is where the foreman is doing their time in progress. They come into their office, they've got a desk or they share a desk, they manually do their time in progress. With Sigma, they can now grab their tablet, they can do their time in their progress that way. Great question.
All right, we've got another question in from Shiv Sharma with AWP University, who's asking, tell me a little bit more about Grandpa's logic.
Oh, Grandpa's logic. I'm a third generation tradesman, second generation electrician. I was raised with blue collar logic. My dad ran many projects. I was his mentee. And there was definitely a process that I learned from my dad, which is why I call it Grandpa's logic. I took that process and defined processes around it. It was actually in the mid 90s where I watched two guys that were way smarter than me in the trade all argue in a lunchroom, almost to fisticuffs over a technical issue. And I knew at that point in time, I'd never make it on that side of the trade and focused on the planning side. There's definitely a logic to Grandpa's logic. I did a presentation last year at the conference on it. There's definitely intrinsic relationship between the tasks when you look at E&I specifically, but there's also intrinsic relationships between the tasks of all disciplines. And there is a innate optimum path of construction of those tasks when you align the multiple disciplines together, and really the glue between those big components of pipe and steel and equipment are the electrical components. That I'd also add to that is that those processes were time tested and proven over and over again manually before ever those processes were embedded into the code of the software.
Yeah, and if I could add a little bit to that as well, being in the trenches with you, if you look at some of the experiences I've had on other projects where engineering data, and if you look at it from, over segmenting, often you get so many different component types in E&I. And on one project I won't name, they had 40 different package types. And one of the key takeaways I took from Grandpa's logic is like, look, you can reduce it down to 7 to 8 core fundamental work type, and those have very definitive relationships between each other. without kind of, given the secret sauce of grandpa's logic, your thought process of, well, how do you take that engineering data and get it into something that the field is actually doing is a key element of what you're doing. We've got another question from Justin Connell from, let me make sure I get the right organization. Justin's with Shell. I see value in this without a doubt, but how does this integrate with P6 and SAP? Great question.
That is a great question. In 2013, I walked into an AWP conference with an iPad tethered to an iPhone with coveralls and a hard hat, and created a level 4 schedule automatically into P6. I then, on that tablet, like any superintendent does, he improvises and moves the packages around. We went back into P6 and the packages moved, and a guy from within project control stood up and said, "You can't touch my schedule." The industry in 2013 wasn't ready for that technology. Right now, we have a manual dump that automatically goes back into P6. But by the end of the year, we'll have full functionality and integration between P6 and the Sigma software, where you can import the level 3 schedule, which is at a CWP level definition, into the software, and it will push back and auto create the level 4 schedule, and create that full integration at an IWP level. Then the key thing that within Sigma, with that full integration going into 2022, will provide is that the planners, in terms of within your schedule, will now no longer be looking for progress updates of the IWP, because we'll be pushing the progress of the IWPs into it. And so now they can actually look at options.
If I could add a little flavor to that in terms of the integration of Sigma with WorkPax and WorkPax Advanced, there's no doubt that often, you've got a schedule that's driving a contract, and so we're managing any number of schedules, but the 4 key ones that is like an EPC baseline schedule, where that is the level 3 CWPs, and then a contractor detailed schedule activities, which really could drive, and again, depending upon the size of the project, the levels are independent, but the next tier down, where you want your IWPs to roll up individually, and then within the WorkPax Advanced, you're developing a very detailed IWP schedule, which is actually what's being built that then could roll up and integrate with and even validate from these type of detailed class 1 estimates that are being taken off. And especially in the electrical, the schedules are developed aren't nearly as good as they are on piping and structural in terms of a reality check of the order things are done on. And so you don't have a single schedule, but an ability to integrate across the schedules becomes really outstanding functionality that allows the reality of what's being done to mirror up with how you want to report it, both at a contractor schedule level and at a primary EPC schedule level.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It was one of the first lessons I learned, Ben, from you, was by the time E&I shows up, the schedule estimates, and often the project teams don't want to hear that not only is the sequence wrong, but the estimates are just in the wrong buckets.
Yeah,
where the man hours actually are.
Yeah, in the plenary session on buildable and creating buildable work packages, I actually have a project example of that issue.
Yeah, and then SAP is a whole other animal of work orders, and work orders being at a higher level to then roll that up to as well simultaneously, but often takes a more of a, I'd call it, custom integration based upon an individual company's configuration of how they are using SAP. But those integrations have been done. I'll looking for other questions. I'll add one in. Is Ben, speak a little bit to that critical alignment of all the detailed level, especially at the E&I. I mean, process systems, it's not too hard to line up piping and equipment, but getting that E&I line up with the system. Speak to the criticality of that.
It is critical because you're dealing with just hundreds of different components. I think the first critical step is to understand that there is a distinct difference in the output of a class 1 estimate that a contractor does in getting an award of the project. There is a completely different detailed output of a class 1 material takeoff. And specifically when it comes to the E&I, we do not do a good job in aligning that data. There is major projects, not only on the E&I, but on the mechanical as well, that went through 3 iterations of trying to align the hours of IWPs to the estimate. And after 3 different tries, the client said, that's enough, just carry on. So I think the first thing is in understanding what that difference is. But now assigning all of those components, there is within the code of Sigma an understanding of those grandpa logic and intrinsic relationships. And so when you assign a line to a system, that line number is often found in the EHT data as well as the instrument data. So basically the rule of thumb in system turnovers is anything that lands in or on a process line up to the first termination belongs to that process system. And so Sigma does a whole bunch of auto assigning based on that logic. The other thing that you end up doing, especially on the E&I, is you can go by task category. And so, often raceway and grounding is its own turnover system. So it's easy to grab those tasks and assign them. And then you can always go into the adjustment where there is going to be adjustments based on points of isolation, determining the system boundaries.
Well, talking about system completions, we're at the completion of the talk. Ben,
Awesome.
I hats off, man. Great delivery and good timing, well prepared.
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for attending. Look forward to working with you if you're ready to do workplace planning with Sigma.
Just a note for everybody, we are going for our lunch break. Now would be the time if you'd like to go and talk to some of the speakers about what you've heard. Now would be the time to reach out to them as well as reach out to other attendees. Please make sure you know which track you'd like to go to for your 1 o'clock session and be there right for 1. Thank you and have a good day, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.